If I went home and told my parents I was being bullied, they would have been like, what's wrong with you? What's that? We just ran away from bombs and killing and all that stuff, and we left, and you're complaining about bullying. Like, what is that? I was the youngest of my siblings. I used to stand up
So
with my
you're already
brothers.
used to everyone
Yeah, but
being
they were
bigger
like,
around
well,
you.
if you're gonna be a tough guy at home, then
Yeah.
you better be a tough guy outside too. You all, standing up to your brothers, but then outside people are saying all these things to you and you're not saying anything. So I remember that in the back of my head, and I was like, you know what, if somebody says, a racist word to me or makes fun of me or something like that, I'm gonna tell them, don't say that. Like, that's not cool.
Welcome. This is Akmal Farah. And can you just tell us a little bit about who you are and to start our conversation today, coming here?
Thank you so much. So my name is Akmal Farah. I'm a former Canadian national champion, national team coach. I'm the current owner of Authentic Taekwondo. I am father of two beautiful kids, and I have a lovely wife named Megan. And we just currently actually moved to Markham so I can be closer to work. I've been living in Canada and obviously a Canadian citizen for 32 years now. Yeah, I would love to have the discussions on the journey so far.
Yeah, thank you for being here today. It's really amazing to have you. So I guess just starting with your journey, you mentioned like you came to Canada, so that's a huge moment. There is just coming to Canada on its own. What was that journey like for you in coming to Canada?
So obviously, coming to Canada, and not speaking English very well, not really knowing how cold Canada can get, was, it had its challenges. But at the same time, I think those challenges were important in my development as the person that I am today. I think it's made me more resilient and tough because of it. And as I was mentioning earlier, I actually had a talk with some students from grade 6 to 8 just last week about bullying and anti-racism. And one thing I mentioned right from the get-go is that I would say, majority of the school, if there was 100 people in that school, I would say 99 people in that school were incredible people. They were very kind, they were very welcoming, they were very loving. But there was always that one person that made that environment or that feeling really bitter.
How old were you when you came?
I was 11.
You were 11. Okay.
I was 11.
So you're very aware of everything that's happening at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was aware of the war that was going on in my country. I was aware of the neighboring country that we visited, Pakistan, for about a year, I think year and a half, and what the environment was over there. And then obviously, applying, living in Pakistan as refugees, and then applying for immigrant status to come to Canada. So I remember, even in Afghanistan, like the war that took place, and in the middle of the night, my parents would wake us up because we'd hear gunfire and then like rockets, flying over our.
So you're in which city in Afghanistan?
Kabul.
So you're in like
In
the
the thick of
capital,
it.
In the capital.
and that's where your family was there for how many generations? So like,
But yeah, for as long as
Right.
we can go back.
Right.
We were.
Wow.
Yeah.
so you're there. This is like homeland, home. And do you have any memories of before the war started, or a war started?
So I actually
Like when was it? Like, remember when you were just a kid?
yeah.
It's funny because when he gave the introduction, it's everything that you are today.
Yeah.
And I'd like to meet the guy before that.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking way back when you were just happy days in Afghanistan. Do you remember that? Were there
Yeah.
such times?
Absolutely. Eid is one of the festivities in Afghanistan. It's like Christmas, and I remember. You wear new clothes. Your parents give you money, and you can go and spend it any way you want. And as a young kid, like 6, 7 years old,
Yeah.
that's huge.
Yeah.
You can buy anything you
lottery.
want. Yeah, it's a lottery. You go and visit with your cousins, and the weather. And I just remember the weather. Like, it's sunny and it's beautiful, and obviously, it's a nice time. We're chasing our cousins. We're playing tag. We're doing all these really fun stuff, and that's what memories. That's when I actually think about the kids now who are actually isolating in the pandemic. your memories as a child is playing with other kids and running around and being out and about and being free.
Experiences. Yeah.
Absolutely. So those were my experiences. Going to school, walking home with my friends. As a very young kid. 7 years old, 6 years old, and it was a very safe, very free environment.
So this was going on up until what age about?
So it was around, I would say probably 8 years old,
When
9
the war
years old.
started?
Yeah. So the war had already kind of began in 1979. There was a lot of political things that were going on. And then around 1987, because it had been going on for so long, people were like, they're kind of like telling my parents, like, this is going to end soon. So where are you going? So
it wasn't yet like a military kind of a conflict. It was political conflict. People just arguing about stuff. There was not yet. You wouldn't hear the guns and the bombs going off. It was like, obviously there's an 8-year span in there, right? Which I'm just trying to understand a little bit better. So you go from happy days, running around in the streets, you're hearing rumblings, right? And when it first starts, how did that feel like?
So we were seeing like the Russian tanks driving on our streets.
You would see them?
Like a fleet
As a
of them as a
child? Wow.
child. Yeah.
Okay.
And we knew, like we just see them.
What about the first time you saw that? Did that look like normal to you? Or like, what's that?
We knew that they weren't really there for us.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like we knew that.
Huh.
But now you look back and you study the events that were happening and you realize that they were actually there to just kind of maintain the peace.
Okay.
They wanted like a peaceful neighbor, a stable political neighbor beside them. There was a lot of so from 1934 until 1974 we had Zahir Shah,
Right.
who was the king, and there was peace and stability and prosperity, and then his cousin overthrew him.
Okay.
And then his cousin, a year and a half, 2 years later, was killed by another guy. And then there was this.
Everyone
Okay.
trying to claim
Everyone
power.
trying to claim power. There has never really been a peaceful transition of power in Afghanistan. Maybe I think 1929 was once,
Okay.
and then obviously when the U.S. took over, and then there were some.
So throughout your
politics.
childhood, this like turmoil was already something kind of happening in the background.
Yeah, it was kind of
Okay.
percolating.
Yeah, and that.
Okay,
And the
interesting.
only time there was like stability is really within the capital. The outskirts were kind of like agriculture, not really as well developed as the main city. But regardless, like we lived a very good life. My dad worked for the United Nations, which was huge for. And then my mom worked, which was huge. She was a teacher, a very common work for women in Afghanistan. So we had really no reason. We had a beautiful house. We had our whole family there. There was no reason for us to leave. So everybody was like, "Why are you going?" It's like us who live comfortably here, who have developed.
Why rock the boat?
Why rock the boat?
Did you
It's gonna
understand
end.
why you were going?
No, I was too young, and I was kind of like kept out of that.
You're amongst the younger of your siblings too, as well. I happen to know some of them, and but so speak to that a little bit. Like, did you have any idea like why you're going? Did you ask? Did you ever wonder?
I didn't ask. It was kind of like we were going on a family vacation.
Okay.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
just packing up, but
This
don't
is what
tell
we're doing.
But don't tell anybody because it was a communist
Yeah.
state, and so we were leaving
Right.
the communist state. And so if they find out that you're escaping, you could you
The
could
whole
be
We
jailed.
had a lot
Yeah.
of that growing up too.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you would know as a family. You wouldn't know everything, but you would know.
What you needed to know.
You would know not to talk about it.
Yeah.
You would not. You would know that, and that was made like clear
It's going to
to
be
you,
so
right? This is
stressful
one of
as a
those things.
child, though.
Well, we just don't think about it. We're
Yeah,
like,
you don't even process it. It's
well,
just the
also
way
culture
it is.
there is like if you talk about it, it's like maybe like I don't know, but
Yeah.
like that's a feeling I got. It was like
Yeah.
you talk about this one, like
So
so like you're a child, but then you're being brought into this world that is already that way, right? And then you're moving. So carry on. Yeah, you had no idea.
So my two oldest brother, they were of that age where they were going to be recruited into the military.
Okay.
And I believe that my parents didn't believe in this war.
Right.
So they didn't want their sons to be fighting for a cause that didn't kind of jive with their feelings.
Yeah.
And they were, I think, 14, 15, just about time where they get a bit of facial hair.
Yeah.
And, the soldiers are walking around the markets, looking for 14, 15-year-olds. And the worst part is they just check check your ID, and then they just take you.
Yeah.
And then you hear from the military's office, your son
Your son has been
deployed.
taken.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
then,
you're aware of this going on, obviously.
And so, I see the soldiers walking around checking people's passports and, ID cards and stuff like that. So my parents actually sent my two oldest brothers first, they were sent out first, and then we were going to follow them out because they were so scared that they were going to be recruited. So they sent them out first.
And sent them to whom? Sorry, sent them out where?
Yeah.
So they kind of like
because they're still kids.
They're 14, 15, but he's like, okay, I don't know the exact details of how they did it.
Yeah.
But there are people that will, you pay them some money, and then they'll take your kids out into safety.
And then take them to a safe
space.
Take
them to a safe space, and then we would go there, and then together as a family, we would go to the neighboring country.
So you remember this part, and your brothers, you're close to them, you're spending time. How did you feel about like two of them gone all of a sudden? What is that?
So it was actually really scary because they actually got caught on the way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And, my mom actually said this to me about a month ago. And he's like, even though we told Adib, not to say anything, he told one of his friends, he's like, I'm leaving. So his friend came and he's like, yeah. So he's already on his way out. And his friend came and knocked on the door and was like, I'm looking for Adib. And he's like, oh, Adib is blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, he actually told me he's leaving. And my mom was like,
but he's 14,
said,
right?
Yeah.
The teenage brain, right?
Yeah. So, obviously, you have this loyalty, you're developing this loyalty with your friends too.
Right.
So you want to be like, hey, you're my friend. But
you want to say goodbye.
You want to say goodbye.
Yeah.
But you can't, and it's, even your relatives, your cousins and your uncles and your aunts, your brothers.
Yeah. So you can't say goodbye to people.
Yes.
And your brothers are the first ones to go, and then you leave.
Did
you ever feel like, I remember this happening, we left for different reasons, obviously, when we were moving, but did you ever, were you not able to take something with you that you wanted to take? Did that ever happen? Is there something?
So this is actually a funny story because I was really good at marbles on the street. So playing with marbles, I had a huge collection of marbles. I would say maybe like 100, if not 200 marbles. I had beaten all the kids.
Yeah. So you earned that.
Yeah. So we were out of our house and staying at this person's house who was kind of like the safety place. And then from there, we were going to leave in the middle of the night. And my brothers still make fun of me to this day. And it's like, I asked my parents if I can go and get my collection of marbles. And they're like, no way.
You can't.
No, so there was nothing.
That's like gut-wrenching.
Yeah, I worked so hard.
You worked hard for that.
Right? Yeah. So you leave these marbles. I mean, everyone's talking about like life and money. And the marbles is like everything to you,
that's
right?
That's his currency.
Yeah.
Right, that's your currency.
That's my currency. That's
but
my
you had to you had to give that up, right?
Yeah.
And you're walking. Do you have any realization at that point in time, like how did that feel? Because then now you're going to somewhere else. And it's like, I call that like your first loss, like, like you're like, that you've experienced.
And your brother was caught too, though. Like we missed that part. Like your brother, how was he caught? Yeah, that's the part that.
So there's checkpoints when you're going from one city to another.
Yeah.
There's all these, so I think they looked at their papers and they didn't believe them and they just said they just turned them back. Luckily,
okay.
So nothing really bad.
Nothing too detrimental happened.
They just turned them back, and then so. Instead of leaving 2 days from now, it took us a week longer to leave. And then we all left together. But I remember, I don't know exactly the kilometers from Kabul to Peshawar, Pakistan. I would guess probably like 500 kilometers. I'm not really sure. But the terrain is very mountainous, and it took us 16 days to get there.
Because you're going up and down the mountain?
Down the mountains, lorries, from one truck to another,
Were you just with your family, or now were you like being consolidated?
Consolidated. So once we get out of the city in a car, then we were put in a truck with a whole bunch of other people that are waiting to get out too. And then you move to another point, and then we're sleeping at mosques or random places. And then from there they feed us a little bit of tea and some bread. And then from there, we consult with another group that are going this way, then we go there.
So why this is important for me to try to understand better is that it's like you're moving from your old self to like a new self that you don't even know what it's going to look like. Yet, in this case, you don't have a choice. in many a times when we're trying to move from one self to another self, there's a choice. So we stay because our marbles are here, right? Right?
But
And that's the
them.
lock, right? I call them the golden handcuffs, right? So that
Yeah.
locks us in. And what's interesting to me in this, like for our purposes and understanding that journey, that experience is here you had no choice. And you had to leave the marbles. You don't know where you're going, the new person who you're going to be or what awaits you. And you're now gaining like a sense of realization that it's not necessarily where all my friends are. It's I don't even know these people. They don't even know me. So your foundational pieces, you go from having street credit, forget the street
Huge
credit.
family.
Now the foundation's
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
And you're starting to become aware of this, but you have no choice. You got to keep going. Did you you already made one attempt, and it was like you're as much as you could to go back and get the marbles. You told no. I love that in a way. You know, I sympathize for the moment, but it's like you couldn't, right? Even if there was space, it's too late now. So did you ever try to make other attempts along the way? Did you ever have thoughts of wanting to go back while you're this kid going through this? Through the terrain, through the lorry, through sleeping in these places. You had a comfortable lifestyle. And was there ever a part of that you can recall going, I just want to go back?
You know, and I'm sure you can relate, is like kids are very resilient. I find working with kids over the years, and it's like, I think genuinely I was just living the experiences. I was really living the experiences. I remember.
You didn't miss your friends?
No, it was like I was on this very exciting experience.
Okay,
but
so
you
you
also
saw
had
it
your
as that.
core family. You had your
Yeah, I
core
had my
family
core
with you. So yeah.
Right? I
Yeah.
mean, I think that made a huge difference. The fact that my brothers were there, the fact that my
Yeah.
mom and my dad were
So
there.
you're reunited with your brothers at this point?
Yeah, so we were all traveling together.
Yeah, they all went together at that point.
You know, and I was looking at, I remember there's one point where we were at some place, but we had kind of like, we didn't know where we were going, but I remembered. So I was kind of like,
So it's more exciting
Yeah.
than it is like, and wonder
Yeah.
about the future. And all of those things that you valued before, well, you still valued them.
You still value them, but you don't
you
know
didn't.
you don't know how long they're going to be gone for. Maybe in about a month. It's only been a few days. We're still trekking, and the excitement kind of continues. So we're going. I remember there's one point. I don't know how true this is, but they were like, everybody hide because there's jets overhead. They're very high up, but hide, and then hide your nails and stuff like that too, because they can see you. I don't know how true that is, but little things like that. It's like.
But you remember that detail.
I remember that detail, and I remember being scared. Like, okay, we have to hide and kind of keep ourselves away from the jets that they can't see us. And then once it kind of flies over, then we get up and kind of continue doing what we were doing before.
So, what's interesting to me there is that you see it's that whole, how else can I say it? Like the windshield in the rear of your mirror, right? So he's looking at the windshield. He just keeps looking at the windshield. And he's excited, you're excited about the future instead of thinking about what's left behind. Yeah. And that enough, call it, distracts you to keep going. Because you know how many kids you hear, I want to go home. Like there's that feeling. I want to go home. You never had that feeling.
No, I find a lot of, in my experience in working with kids that have come from, like I was saying before, like I worked in schools where 80% of the kids, the constituency, were new immigrants to Canada, and many of them were coming from situations such as yourself. But I find it so interesting just hearing it from reflecting from an adult perspective, because you just keep moving forward. And when your family, is not living in a state of fear, like they're fearful of things that are around them and being cautious, but your parents must have been engaging in some way to say, okay, like they're smiling, they're engaging with you, they're moving forward. You had some kind of.
But were people smiling?
Your parents, your poor parents, because when you do these,
I can't imagine people smiling through this.
Parents will.
Really?
There'll be laughter. There'll be.
But aside from your parents, you notice, like, is this a fun thing or is this a serious thing?
I could see the nervousness in their faces.
Yeah.
I could see it, but you know what? Obviously, I credit my parents for making that judgment call to say, let's go.
Yeah.
We have everything here, but we want to make sure our kids are okay. I really, really do. And you
didn't know all that at the time.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that at all. And I also give my mom a lot of credit. She was a very strong woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For her to be like, no, I know my husband is comfortable here and I know we have a decent life, but I can't see my kids going through that. And really, like, even through the treks, like, my mom really took charge.
Yeah.
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 You know, and a lot of people, kind of like stereotype the Afghan or the South Asian or the Middle Eastern women, but you know
They
what?
have no idea.
Yeah, they have no idea.
Those who do that have no idea.
They run the show.
They're the strongest
Yeah.
kind.
They're the
Yeah.
strong-
To me, like I've seen,
My
Yeah.
mom is
Very strong
incredibly
women.
strong, incredibly resilient, incredibly tough.
strong on the
Yeah.
inside.
Inside and inside,
out.
yeah, absolutely. You know, the way she brought us up, she really took charge of the family.
Yeah.
And even through those trekking, there was points where we could have been left behind, like, oh, this truck is full, wait for the next one. And my mom was stepping up and saying, like, no.
Yeah.
So,
We're
it's
gonna get
funny
on
you
that.
talk about surrounding yourself with the right people. Earlier on, we were talking about this. I'm just trying to observe the situation from just from an abstract point of view, right? So here's like leaving the old, going to the new, no choice, right? And a support that's there. I mean, that seems to kind of like stand out a lot in the story that you're talking about, even though you're unaware of it at the moment. So in that case, like life made a choice somewhat for you. But that's the other part, is that had you been able to make that choice, right? Sometimes what is it that we want to do? Go get the,
Life has different,
different
plans.
Yeah. So I love that about it. So carry on. So you ended up in Peshawar eventually.
We ended up in Peshawar. Right away, my parents put us in school, which was great.
Okay, so you stayed there for a while.
Stayed there for a while. I think I was in grade 4 over there.
People speak the same language
I was
there?
just thinking that.
So we actually went to a refugee school where there was an Afghan.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
there was all Afghans there. The teachers were Afghan. They were teaching us about science, about math, and we were learning a little bit of English.
Did you know that this is like a different kind of a school? I'm in Pakistan. I'm in a certain specific special situation. Did that ever?
I don't think I was too aware of what
Okay.
was going on. I just like, okay, well, this is the new life, and
Yeah.
so here we go.
This
Go
is
to
it.
school.
Let's
All
go to
right.
school. Yeah,
Okay.
do our
Keep
best.
going.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then from there, we kind of moved to Islamabad. We were getting ready to kind of like move to Canada, and it was closer to the embassy where I think a lot of the interviews and stuff like that were happening. So we moved to Islamabad, and then from Islamabad, finally in 1989.
So sorry, how long were you in Pakistan then?
I
for?
think maybe a year and a half.
Okay, not too long.
So we were
but
maybe
yeah.
like about a year or something in Peshawar, and then maybe another 6-7 months in Islamabad.
Okay.
When you were at school, going to school in Peshawar or even in Islamabad for the time that you were there, did you notice any other kids around you not being okay with the situation, or acting out, or whatever you want to call it, in that situation?
I didn't notice
You didn't
anything like
notice.
that. I think we were all just kind of like, eager to see our friends and hang out and be a part
Just
of something.
be a kid. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, you know what? I still have a friend from Peshawar who moved to Montreal. We still stay
Oh,
connected.
wow.
Yeah, like more than 30 years later.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, we actually moved from Peshawar, and then when we moved to Islamabad, he was our neighbor. And then like he moved January of 1989 to Canada, and we moved February 1989 to Canada. Yeah, so we still kind of stay connected, but we were never like, I don't think we ever sat around and kind of felt sorry for ourselves. We were
No.
always like, what's next?
This is it.
This is it. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's next? How are we going to make it better?
I'm just wondering, because I've never had this kind of conversation like face to face with somebody who's gone through, like you have, right?
Yeah.
So
Usually different though.
like for
Usually
us, like
for little
yeah,
kids.
like I'm
say.
like part of a migrant family as well, but not going through that same process.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to think. I'm just wondering, did anybody show any signs of fatigue or not being okay with this? Because they're leaving, it just doesn't add up in my head that they're having to leave everything. They had good reason to go. They had something to
I think you
look
kind of just
forward
go into
to.
action mode.
Right?
And correct me if I'm wrong. I think
You
there's
ever
just like a fight instinct kicks in, and you just kind of mobilize and go into action. And from what I've learned from hearing a lot of people's stories is that sadness and stuff comes when they finally truly settle sometimes, right? And they realize what they've gone through to get to Canada or get to wherever they're going. That's what I've learned from people's stories. I don't know if that resonates with your experience with it, with your family.
So I think as children, we are always like, we're looking for the next excitement,
Yeah.
But I think I was definitely harder on my parents, because they missed their brothers and their sisters,
Right.
and their family and their
You didn't notice
work.
any sign of it.
I didn't notice any sign of it. Obviously, you know what? For us, it was just like, okay, well, we're here, and our parents, how I think they conducted themselves made an impact on us. So if we saw them sad and being like lonely and missing out, then maybe it would affect us. But I think we didn't really see that. Or if they were, they didn't really show it.
They protected you from it.
That's a huge credit to them.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
it was, I never really saw that in them. My parents are very religious. And one of the things about religion is that it makes you grateful for everything that you have. And, as far as I can remember, they've always been incredibly grateful for every opportunity that they've had. And they were, even when we arrived, in Pakistan and in Canada, they were, even though we were upper middle class in Afghanistan and then poor in Canada, they were grateful. They're like, we have peace.
We got
have
where
stability.
we wanted to be.
Yeah, we don't have to, there's no rationing of stuff anymore. Where in Afghanistan, it's like, there's not a lot of stuff for people, like toothbrushes and toothpaste and stuff like that. Like there's a ration on it. So you go and you want to buy it, but you can't because they've run out. But it doesn't exist anymore. Like just the basic necessities, we were incredibly grateful for, to have a roof over our head.
Toothpaste, shampoo, soap.
Just soap, warm water. Yeah. Warm water. Like it's such a...
All the things we take for granted.
We don't even think about like warm water, but it makes a huge difference.
It's a huge difference.
Absolutely.
Or water in your house
water
too.
In your house,
I know,
electricity.
Yeah.
There's times when they would shut down electricity because there's too much demand on it. So they would shut it down in the coldest nights. It doesn't matter what it was. They would shut it down. And then you're kind of sitting there in the dark, but it was okay because you kind of just hang out with your family and tell stories.
And that's the way it was, right? That's the way it was.
Yeah.
So now you land here in
February
Canada.
of 89.
In February, you said 20, whatever day it was.
24th.
Coldest month of the year.
Yeah.
Do you remember? You remember the day.
I do remember the day. It was very, very cold. And, I think a few days later we were taken to schools. I was taken to middle school and my brothers were going to high school. We were sitting there and I guess the toughest part at that time is like, okay, well, we were kind of like just going with the motion, Math was difficult. English obviously was difficult. If you don't know, a lot of the basics of math, it's hard to get to the more advanced parts of it.
Yeah.
So it's like trying to understand a lot of the stuff that the teacher was saying. I didn't understand it. And then obviously on top of that, he was saying it in English was really difficult. So trying to catch up to all that stuff was really, really tough. And then obviously trying to, maintain a kind of like a social setting, which I am very social. I remember in Afghanistan, like running around with my cousins and my friends in the playground was, there's no real playground.
And you're adolescents at that point, so you're very aware of it just developmentally as well, right? Social is kind of everything.
Hold on. So you're saying some things that I want to ask you some more about. Just the thing that you just talked about and I know what you mean, but I'd love to hear your perspective on this. Is you're trying to learn math, but it's being taught in English, which you don't
can't
understand.
Even speak English.
Okay, so stop right there for a second, and I just want to understand a bit better, because it's amazing how many times in life, right, we need to learn something, but we need to learn something to be able to learn that,
we need to learn.
and we don't even have that.
Right.
That's where you are now. So then what do you do?
So
well,
what
did you do?
Yeah, you just tough it out.
What do you mean you toughed it out? Like
you just sit there and
you got failing grades at some point. Did someone start showing you that you're failing and you're not going to make it? You ever get that feeling?
Absolutely. So obviously you take your report cards home and your parents sees it. You're not doing very good, and so it's like
so you go from like street credit, marble king to this.
To this, to like all of a sudden starting from the ground up.
Like even below.
Below, absolutely.
Right. Yeah, you're starting at a deficit.
And so then your parents are looking at you that, here we are making these sacrifices for you and you don't get it.
Yeah.
You don't understand.
How does that feel for that moment there?
You feel like a definite failure. You feel like, oh my gosh, like I'm not doing enough. I'm trying my best, but it's not enough. And then, and honestly, like February we landed in Canada. By June, I was okay to go. I was out of ESL.
Wow.
I was out of ESL and put into French in September of grade 7. So
What do you
here
mean-
I-
that was
what do you
it-
mean you were put into French?
I was
Well, because
so-
you have an opportunity to do, did you do
French
French
is part of it.
immersion?
They
Did
didn't do
you, or
French
did you just do
immersion, but
French?
They were
Yeah.
teaching English, obviously, and then you have a
He
French
would have
course
been
as well.
exempted as
Okay.
ESL.
As
Yeah.
ESL, you don't exactly. You
Yeah.
don't go to French classes. So everybody has
Oh,
one
I see.
French course
Yeah.
that everybody has to take.
Okay.
So here I am trying to learn English, and now I'm put into French
Wow.
Within the same year.
within like by September of
Yeah. The
You
same
know,
calendar
same
year,
cal-
different
exactly.
Which is
academic
taught to
year.
you
exactly.
in English in a
In
way,
English,
right?
yeah.
So, it's,
And I'm
What do you do?
completely lost. I'm
Yeah.
completely lost. So
so
obviously,
you feel like you're failing.
yeah, I feel like I'm failing. So
And?
obviously, when I get to high school, I have a decision to make. You have
Oh,
to have
now
one
you're in
French
high school.
credit,
Yeah.
and that's it.
Yeah.
I'm never taking French again.
I'm with you, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not a language person either.
So it was
for that one.
really really difficult. But you have other subjects that you're doing well at.
Like what?
Like
What did you feel that gave you that strength?
I think
I'm doing
just-
good at something.
obviously gym was an easy credit to do
there
well
it
in.
is.
You're active, you're
Well, for
running
you.
around. For me, yeah,
Okay.
it was great. I think science was okay.
Yeah.
Science was good. And you try to catch up with other classes as well as best as you can. But at the same time, I think teachers are very understanding.
Yeah. What was your experience when you come into the school? Because I know a lot of kids, when I've worked with them, although the kids I get usually is because it's behavioral, right? Behavior is a form of communication, but a lot of kids will internalize their struggles when they're a new immigrant. And so when you're there, did you encounter like teasing, bullying, any kind of like social issues as a result of being, a new kid in the classroom that doesn't speak the language? You probably dressed differently, probably not dressed appropriately for the weather because you're not used to the weather. Like, what was that like for you from a social perspective when you're in the thick of, trying to learn the language, trying to get grades and you're failing, and then you're dealing with this social structure that's so important at the age like 11. That's a huge developmental stage socially.
So it was, as I mentioned earlier, 99% of the people in the school were
We're good,
incredibly
yeah.
welcoming. They were very kind. But obviously there was that one person that was, wanted to bring themselves up by putting you down
Yeah.
and, making fun of you and everybody around you laughing. But I also, going back in that moment, I didn't know what they were saying and I didn't know what to do. And obviously as time went by, I understood what they were saying. But by that time, I felt like it was maybe a little bit too late because what happens with bullies in particular, and I remember it going back in that time, is like one person is making fun of you and then they're laughing and then other people are laughing and then they realize that this person is not really fighting
Getting
back.
it.
And now
Yeah.
there's 2. Then there's 3 and then there's 4. And all of a sudden you become kind of like the punching bag
Yeah,
for
like
a
a
lot of
target.
people's jokes.
Right.
Yeah.
So you
I-
didn't get this was happening while it's happening.
At the beginning, I didn't, but then obviously by the time I understood it,
Yeah.
and the racist names and
Yeah.
the things that they were saying to me,
Right.
I understood it. And then I think, you develop a personality because of that. Maybe you use humor to try to like deflect the attention. Or your ego kind of like says, hey, like that's not cool. And so you stand up. So obviously, there's a,
How did you react? Which one did you take?
I think I did a little bit of both.
Okay.
I think I did, obviously, speaking of wins and losses, I've had my battles in the school yard,
Yeah.
going out
Yeah.
after school and saying, it's like they say something, and then you're like, you know what, buddy, like that's not cool. Like you're not a nice person either in a
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
demeaning way. And then they're like, okay, fine. And it's like they're waiting for that. Okay, I'll see you after school. And then
Right.
throughout the day, everybody's, Akmal and blah, 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 after school, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
they're like hyping. There's like it's like a pay-per-view fight. They're
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
and
I
there's
remember
a bunch
that.
of kids.
Yeah, after
Yeah,
school.
yeah.
Yeah,
And so
it's gonna happen.
it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then so now, I don't know. Did the teachers hear about it? Are they going to come and confront
Yeah.
that kid and
Yeah.
Akmal and say, guys, I hear you guys are going to go out today. Like, why didn't they? Now I look back.
Yeah.
Right now I'm thinking about it. It's like, why didn't they bring us together and be like,
Interject.
if I see you guys are going to be both in big trouble. Go back to your class and respect each other, shake hands, do whatever. And they didn't. And this was multiple times. And obviously, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. And either way, it builds the character that you have inside of you. And it's just a matter of standing up for yourself. And I think that's the most important thing. Maybe not, obviously.
Not necessarily physically, but
violence
with
is
your
not the answer,
words. Yeah.
Because it doesn't end. It does not end.
No.
it can get, especially nowadays, and especially in the age or the neighborhood that you live in, it can be very, very bad.
Yeah.
So you don't want to go that route, regardless of who you are, where you are, and what you do.
But you did.
I had to.
Well, see, that's the point.
Yeah.
I feel for the kids that do it, and you probably hear this, is that they feel they have to.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, what's your alternative, right? So you go through this. It's interesting to me that you chose that. Today, obviously, you have to speak from this perspective of who you are. But what I find interesting is that whether you call that, maybe not your best decision, right? You might say that today. But at that time, it was a necessary decision for you to make, to stand up for yourself.
I didn't know better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one told me that, you know what, when somebody confronts you
I
and
don't see a
grabs you by
problem
the
with standing
shirt,
up for yourself.
that
I don't
you
see a
just-
problem with it.
Yeah, no one told me that you could have avoided that.
See, I
So-
didn't stand up for myself. You did stand up for yourself. I'm telling you from a person who didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't. Like you, I could see like when you're talking right, I'm like, that's exactly what happened. But I never fought because I couldn't. I wasn't good in gym. Like you already you have a gift. Obviously, we're going to get to that later. But you had that, and so you lean on your strengths. Why not? There's nothing wrong with that, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, the laws and the rules and what you should do and what you shouldn't do.
Yeah.
Right. But you had the ability to stand up for yourself. You had older brothers who like give you your strength and they're your support. You have a strong mother. Like all these things give you this strength. So you stand up for yourself. Because I didn't. And I can tell you, sometimes I look back and go, could have stood up for myself. Somebody else stood up for me sometimes. But, I think it was a good decision, personally.
I think
You have to stand up for yourself.
You do have to stand up for yourself.
You do have to stand up
Yeah.
for yourself. You have to stand up
Asserting your
for
own
your
power.
character,
Yeah.
for your integrity,
Yeah.
for your dignity.
Yeah.
When somebody is mocking you
It's
because
hard to call that a bad decision or a wrong decision.
I think
thing
he's
is-
saying the
is
way he went about it
I
is
felt
what
like
he.
I had no other option.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
the one thing that
Right.
I teach kids now is that you have lots of options, especially children today. So I look at myself at that time and say, if I went home and told my parents I was being bullied, they would have been like, what's wrong with you? What's that? We just ran away from bombs and killing and all that stuff, and we left, and you're complaining about bullying. Like, what is that? 20, 30 years ago, definitely, it was a non-existent issue. And same thing, I was the youngest of my siblings. I used to stand up
So
with my
you're already
brothers.
used to everyone
Yeah.
But
being
they were
bigger
like,
around
well,
you.
if you're going to be a tough guy at home, then
Yeah.
you better be a tough guy outside too. You all, standing up to your brothers, but then outside people are saying all these things to you and you're not saying anything. So I remember that in the back of my head, and I was like, you know what, if somebody says, a racist word to me or makes fun of me or something like that, I'm going to tell them, don't say that. Like, that's
Yeah.
not cool. Maybe at times where it's a group, I would try to like deflect it and make a, joke out of it.
Yeah.
And then it kind of like deflects. But if I felt like I was being pushed against the wall, I was going to stand up for myself. And it's, again,
It's a dance.
it's a dance.
Yeah.
And those are, I think, my failing moments.
I don't know. I
I
gotta
think-
tell you, I'm going to defer with you, and you know how much I respect you, but I'm thinking to myself, it's like look at life, right? You're the youngest of amongst the youngest of your siblings, so everyone's constantly bigger around you as you're growing up. You don't realize this because you're having a good time, but you have to keep up, right? You don't realize that, but then you go through this experience of having to, give up, lose. That trial through the mountains, that 16 days, changes life. Like you sound like, I was having fun, I was looking forward, but you couldn't just eat whenever you wanted to eat. You couldn't sleep whenever you wanted to sleep. Sometimes you're sleepy and the road is bumpy, or you're uncomfortable, or you're in a place that's too cold, and there's all of this stuff going on. So when that moment comes that you in the future, when you're facing somebody, you actually have the choice to say, hey, that's not cool. Like you saw that as a choice, but that choice was something that you kind of earned the ability to execute on because of what you went through in like a much more challenging past. So standing up to a bully is like, hey man, that's not cool.
Yeah.
I don't see anything wrong with it, but I think you had a choice and you were conditioned. You were strong enough to be able to do that because of these other things that happened in the past. I find that interesting.
I think the difference between the immigrant child who doesn't know his options and a child who grows up in Canada and knows those options is that you can go to your teacher and talk to them and say, you know what, this person was saying this stuff to me and now he's threatened that he's going to go and beat me up after school.
You don't have that.
I did that.
Yeah.
You did that?
Yeah, I did do that. And I got two types of responses. What some teachers were like, hey, stop bullying him or stop doing it, because teachers they're great. They're great to have around us. And they did do that for me. But then right after they did that, street credit goes even lower. Right? You're like, oh my God, like what did I just do?
Right.
Now I have no dignity out here. And then the other one, they're all like kind of give it to you in the best form that they can. But the other one said to me, stop complaining.
Yeah.
Stop being such a whatever and like pay no mind.
Yeah.
So those weren't really better options for the immigrant kid, I'll tell you that.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm just saying what I felt on the other side of that.
I think it's an ongoing thing too. Like I'm hearing your story. I remember my son in grade 4 being bullied, right? And he was getting ridiculed, and then it was getting to the point where he was getting physical, and they would just do like they'd trip him, and then they'd push him into walls and things like that.
Right.
And it just got to the point where there was enough, and he would assert himself verbally. And I remember his dad and I went to the school and we sat with the principal, and I'm a school social worker. So this is the school social worker saying this, like, right. But now I'm a mom, right?
Yeah.
And so I just said to them, I said, you need to deal with this. This is happening in your building on your time. But if push comes to shove and this child trips my child again or pushes him again or hits him again, I've given my child permission to respond with that, not initiate aggression, but respond with that, because it was getting to a point where the physical stuff was escalating, right? It was just little things and it would just escalate. And I think they were trying to see if he would assert himself physically. And he's a very athletic and strong kid. And he's like, I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want to touch anyone. I'm like, 100%. That's always the first path. But we've tried all of these. And if they hit you, it's okay to defend yourself. You're not initiating, you're defending. And so it's such a delicate balance. It's so muddy, because I do hear what you're saying with not going to the physical place, particularly in the context of what we're looking at as a society now for youth with their access to, weapons and all kinds of different dynamics that are happening in our communities. So I do hear what you're saying loud and clear that way. It's such a balance that way, because the kid might move from I'm being bullied to go getting a knife or go getting a gun really quickly, right?
But it is so important.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm not encouraging anybody to go get a knife or anything like that.
No.
But I can tell you, lying down is not an option.
Right.
Right? Because after that, getting up after that is even harder.
Yeah.
Because then, you know how you say you internalize, you use that term, we internalize it?
We internalize it.
He didn't internalize it much. He displays that from what I'm hearing it, he just, he acts from outside. It's a gift.
Yeah.
I would internalize it and I'd accept it. And then it makes it, until today, I fight the demon, because I've been there, and then it goes deeper and deeper, and then you just succumb.
Yeah.
And you just give up. Like I'm telling you, I had a nightmare about this, like literally last night, on something else that an opportunity turns out, which is a challenge for me. But I'm just saying this to you because it's resonating with me so much. You say you stood up. And today you're thinking like, you're saying to yourself that there were alternatives.
There's alternatives, because, not every fight goes your way.
Right.
Of course.
You
fought.
But you fought, but you also get beat up.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then a few of your friends take a few shots on you as well.
Sure.
And then you're out of that circle that people had around you. You're walking out that circle with tears in your eyes.
Right.
Yeah.
With your head down.
Right.
Crying home.
Yeah.
And that's not a nice place to be either. And
So you've been there too.
I've been there for sure. I've been there for sure. And
so when you made that decision, so talk about that. So you made that decision.
It's psychological.
You went back and so now you're second guessing that move as well.
Absolutely. So it's psychological, right? Because I felt like I was strong enough to stand up to people. And so, person comes in the schoolyard, everybody's leaving the school, and, they walk towards you, and, you're trying to be a tough guy, and maybe the first guy, you drop your bags, you go at it, you take him down. I remember my principal Mr. Goldberg was an amazing guy, honestly. Like, he kind of understood what I was going through, and he wasn't too hard on me. You two sit down, okay, don't ever do it again. And then he would kind of be like kind to me. He would see me in hallways, he would smile at me, and I love the guy to this day. But then, one specific time, we were in the schoolyard, everybody's leaving, and the guy's walking towards me. So I stop because I'm thinking it's gonna go. And then obviously the teachers are gonna come and stop it. And the guy walks past me with all of his friends. He's not fighting. Okay, great. So I go, and he's waiting for me in an area where it's not school area anymore. It's just a big open area, and all his friends are there. And I have to walk past there. So I have a choice now. I can run back the other way and go into the security of my school, or go past it and face it. But it's psychological. I'm seeing him and all of his friends waiting for me.
Yeah.
I've already lost the fight.
Yeah.
So I don't even really fight. I'm going through the motions.
So
it takes me down.
So what did you do? You kept going?
Yeah, I kept going.
Okay,
I faced it.
You kept going.
But it's not.
You didn't turn around.
Yeah, I didn't turn around. I faced it. I walked up. I went through the motions. I didn't even try, but I was trying to
Right.
grapple
And today,
with
you would
him.
not encourage somebody to do that.
Absolutely not.
No.
Again, because you don't know
See, I
the
find
ending.
that so interesting because I think because you walked forward on that, there's other things we're going to talk about in terms of your journey. But it's funny that you say you walked there, and now I can connect that to 2 years ago when you're managing your Taekwondo studio in COVID, and all the other Taekwondo studios are closing. To me, that's the same exact situation. You're facing something, you're outside of your comfort zone, and what do? You keep going. I find that to be the exact same thing. And I believe that you walked at it the first time, and that's now I'm understanding why you didn't turn around and close your studio. Had you turned around that day, I wonder if you would have turned around this day.
I think it's just about options. When the pandemic happened and I had to keep going, it's because I felt like I had no option. I think as children we do have options. I think there are people that will listen to us. Like that teacher that said,
and keep
sit
speaking
down.
until someone does listen. I think
Absolutely.
that's the message
That's
too,
the beautiful
right?
thing that we teach in Taekwondo is that
Yeah.
you do have a voice.
Yeah.
People will listen to you. You just have to keep saying it. If the first person doesn't hear you, keep saying it until somebody does. Don't keep it inside you. And I think I had an issue with that by keeping it inside me because I couldn't complain to people about bullying. Again, you know what? I'm from Afghanistan. I've come from a way worse place.
Yeah.
We've been through worse. Like, you can't complain about this. Like, you've been through a lot already. So get over it and keep going back to school and sit there and get good marks. That's all you have to do.
They don't realize the psychological impact of that causes,
Absolutely,
right?
especially at that time. We're just understanding the psychological effects of it now, especially for people who are keeping it inside them and don't say anything.
Well, it has a lot of value to hear you say, the person who did it saying, don't do it, right? So and you know what it's like to do that. I know what it's like to go the other way because I've gone the other way and I say to myself, I should have gone. But if I'm talking to you today, you're saying to me, there is another option.
Because you don't know the result of it.
Right.
You don't know if you're going to win that fight or you're not. And if you're not going to win that fight, you don't know how it's going to end. It could end really badly.
Yeah.
We're
Especially,
and I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
I just want
no.
to say this because this is very important.
Yeah.
I think when we're teaching bullying, we paint everything with a single brush. We don't know the neighborhood that they live in. We don't know their exact age. We don't know what their abilities are. I also grew up in government housing, for a very long time. And it was a rough part of town.
Yeah.
You don't talk about bullying. You don't complain. You just keep your head down and you just go home and you just do what you have to do and that's it. And we got lucky because no one really picked on us either because we lived in the neighborhood. So a lot of the people that were kind of like the tough ones in the neighborhood, they didn't want to have issues with the neighbors. They wanted to have a good neighborhood. They wanted to deal with the outsiders.
Yeah.
If anybody came from outside, they would be mugged and beaten and robbed and all that stuff. But because they knew who we were.
Not the people in their niche.
In the niche, because then we complain and then now they have issues within their own community.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So it was important. So I think when we talk about bullying and standing up for yourself, I think, again, and I say this when I teach Taekwondo, is we really teach communication. So when we're kicking and punching, we're keying up, we're having the confidence to use our voice to, it may feel weird by saying, but we're actually using our voice.
It's very empowering.
It is
very empowering.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's important for us to use our voice and to say it in a meaningful way, in a strong way, so that the person who is bullying us understands it. We're standing up like, that's not cool what you're saying. I don't appreciate it. Continues, you go to your teacher, and obviously you get home and you say, Mom, Dad, this is what happened to me today.
Yeah.
And this is how it made me feel. My son is 4 years old and he's already understanding feelings. He's like, oh, I was in the blue zone today. And I love it. It's so beautiful. Then I can understand what he's feeling.
Where he's feeling and where it comes in his body too, right? And what happens for him.
Sure.
Yeah.
So,
and one of the things they don't talk about a lot is the people who are bullying are usually some of the most saddest, traumatized people out there, and they're lashing out onto others to elevate themselves. So I remember speaking to what you're saying is through the communication and using your voices. When I was going through this with my son, was be like, talk about how you feel. I feel like this when you do that. Or how would you feel if someone said that to you? So when they say the nastiest thing, flip it back. How would you feel about that? Or just
100%.
Just flip the switch on the dialogue, because when you look at something through even shifting perspective or through a compassionate lens, the person on the other side, they're going to be taken back from that. They're going to be like, what are you talking about? You're not throwing a dig at me. You're not throwing a punch at me, but you're like, where's that coming from? Or how would that make you feel? Right. So
I agree with you 100%, because now I think about the people that were, bullying me and pushing me around, and I think about them, and they were, I think they were victims themselves.
They
were going through something.
Yeah.
And I think they're trying to mask that by
100%.
putting that on you and making you feel like that. So I think having that conversation to be like, you know what, that makes me feel sad. Like, I'm really sad by what you said. And it's tough for a child, who is maybe 10, 11, 9, whatever, to be able to say those words and verbalize it.
But we have to teach them.
But we have to teach them.
We have to teach them.
We do have to teach them. And that's the responsibility of the teacher, to be like, you guys are going through this. This is not good because you're making this person feel sad.
Yeah.
How would you feel if someone said that to you or made fun of your family or your background or your name or, all that stuff. So it's I know teachers have a lot to deal with. But this is an important issue as well.
But it's teachers, it's coaches, it's parents, it's aunts and
everywhere.
uncles, it's all of us. We all have that responsibility, right? So, because it's a community to raise a child.
That's a huge takeaway for me personally to hear you say that, because I was not the one who would fight. I couldn't win a fight. Forget about it. So to hear you say that, because to me, I was like, I made the wrong decision. I should have fought, and I should have fought harder. And I'm thinking to myself, hearing you say that as a person who did engage, to say that, no, there's a better decision still. I think that means a lot, because somebody who says take the other road, who hasn't taken the first road in the first place, can't speak to it.
Right.
And you have taken the other road, and yet you say, no, there is a better one. So I really appreciate you saying that.
You can think of it as both ways. You take the challenge on and you fight and you hurt the other person. How is that going to make you feel now as a professional adult looking back 20 years later and be like, that you hurt someone? That kid was suffering himself. He was a victim himself, and you made it even worse for that person. You lost the fight and you go home in tears, and with bruises and scratches and your head down, and you deal with that trauma of that and the friends laughing at you as you walk out of that circle.
Okay.
That's the other one as well.
So enough with the analysis. Now you're back. No, this is important that we did that. But now I want to go back to what you just said right here. So you're going back, your head is down, you're in tears. Then what?
You go wait for the bus at the bus stop.
You go home and
you go home and
you took your beating.
On the bus, you take your beating, and you just feel like the lowest form of humanity. Like you just feel really, really bad.
So how did that then change to like the next morning? What changed? Did
So
you
you
sleep
just-
it off? Like what?
Yeah, you just I think you just wake up and you don't feel like that anymore. But obviously, people know like you took that fight on and you lost, and so whether it's
Do you remember the next day?
I don't remember the next day,
Okay.
but you know what? I think it's important because I feel the same way when I used to fight in Taekwondo in competition. So when I lost, I used to take my losses incredibly
Personally,
serious, very,
yeah.
very personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Just beat yourself
Beat
up
yourself
afterwards.
up afterwards. And I
that's
was so
understandable.
hard on myself. And, because I was trying so hard to be somebody. And here I am going to whatever tournament and losing. And then I was like, and it was hard. But now I teach my athletes, like, I know you lost. Yeah, it's okay to dissect the issue and learn from it and apply the lessons next time. So you're looking forward to the next event instead of like always being in one moment and beating yourself
What
up.
did you do well in that moment? Or where did that person get the take on you that you can strengthen for the next time, where there's a gap in your skills or, proficiency there, right?
But
Yeah.
you need a good coach to be able
Yeah.
to sit and analyze
Observe
that with you.
and break it down.
But if you're doing it by yourself in anything, and you don't have anybody that kind of
To bounce it off of.
it's very, very difficult. And again, I hope we're okay to talk about this, immigrant issue is that, as a child, I didn't really have any role models. I didn't have anybody that I could really talk to. Nobody had really done it here for me to be like, I want to be like that person. So who do I talk to? Who do I emulate? Who do I open up to? Nobody.
Because you just had your family.
You just had my family, and my family was busy trying to bring food to the table on a
Yeah.
daily basis. So how do I talk to them? My mom is cooking for 5 hungry boys, 6 including my dad. So like I can't talk to her. She doesn't understand me. I can't talk to my dad. He's busy trying to adjust to his new life, his new norm. My brothers are kind of like they're in their own world as well.
Right,
So
yeah.
'Cause they're
who do I
older,
talk
yeah.
to?
So then, what
So
did
you-
you do if you have nobody to talk to?
So I think it just builds. You just keep going through the motions. It just builds, and you try to play this role, and until I got to high school. And high school was kind of a better place because it was a new environment, a new school, new friends, new teachers, almost like a new beginning. And I spoke English better. I understand the importance of fitting in, the social circles.
You're used to
and
the
all that
culture a
stuff.
bit more.
Absolutely.
So what you're saying is then, again, I'm just going to say this back to what I just heard you say, is you got nobody to talk to about a situation. Like everybody, even the ones that are closest to you, you feel like either they got what they got to deal with or can't relate, right? And you just keep going. Because it's interesting when you come out of that, it's not like it's like from one moment right to the next. There's like, it's a transition, right? It's gradual, right? And you don't know how long it's going to take when you're going through it, but you just keep going.
You just keep going.
Okay,
And
that's
if
an
you-
important thing to
It
talk
is-
about.
It is an important thing.
Yeah.
It's also important of the kind of friends that you have around you and how they make you feel based on the events that happen to you.
There's always somebody, eh?
There's always somebody. And I think, if your friends are like, okay, it's all right, man, let's go have some lunch together. It's okay. Like, I know what you went through and it's tough, and maybe it's adult version of having that conversation, but children have a way of communicating to each other
Yes.
in that way as well.
Yes.
And you kind of like get lost in that moment with your friends. So I think having friends who don't judge you based on your wins
Yeah.
and losses is important.
Right.
And I think,
You had that.
and I had that, yeah. And I think I was lucky. My friends empathized with me. They understood the feelings that I went through, and they were, they couldn't stand up for me or they couldn't fight for me, but they stood beside me and they were like, okay, let's keep going.
So just, I want to look at that a little closer because let's just say, I guess my question to you is were they your friends because they didn't judge you? Like, were they your friends first, or did they become your friends better after that moment because they didn't? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, did you know to go to them because they're friends, or did you find that they're not judgmental, so that's where I'm going? Like, is that what kept you there? Do you get what I'm saying?
Sure.
Because now you're fighting, there's this conflict, there's people you can't go to, you're somewhat alone, but then you find it based on that, people who are not judgmental. So even if you don't have somebody to talk to, that's your guide.
I don't know how we became friends. We just
Exactly.
kind of like found
Right.
each other,
Right.
and we just kind of connected, and we remained friends throughout
Yeah.
middle school.
There's this
throughout
really
those times.
interesting magnetism that happens in peer groups. They really, the kids who need each other find each other, or if the kids that are going through similar challenges, I've seen this so many times. They like magnets to each other. It's really
Like
interesting.
the law of attraction kind of thing.
Yeah,
don't know
I
why.
don't know. That's
really
what I call it.
interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you trust it, right?
You trust it, and you kind of hang out, but obviously they would probably prove themselves too at that moment.
Yeah.
When you lose the fight and you show up to the school next day and they want nothing to do with you. I think you realize that that's not really my friend.
Right.
But they still want to, you sharing lockers together or something like that, or you're side by side, or you're in the same home room, and then you have lunch together, whatever. You just kind of stick together.
I remember reading about that somewhere. Like, when you fall down at some point in time, you learn about three types of people, right? The person that took you there to make you fall down, the person that walked away,
And the
then
person that stayed
came
with
to
you or
came
can't.
towards you. And they say there are two kinds that come towards you, right? The one that kicks you while you're down, and then the one that
lifts
there's
you
two
up.
kinds even
Yeah.
there, right? So there's actually
Yeah.
four kind of people you got to be aware of.
Yeah.
But the point is that that's the beauty of the fall down too. That's when you discover who your friends are,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
and there's beauty in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't you think?
Well, because it's an authenticity then to the relationship.
And you yourself
right?
say you don't know like how, but somehow they find each other.
Yeah, they do.
Like
They're
that's another
magnets.
sort of thing that gives me a lot of like that what I'm trying to focus on is that balance between the hope and despair, right? So like you got nobody to talk to, and somehow, right?
You get
It's
this
out there
friend-
for you, and whether you go looking for it or it comes to you somehow, you yourself said you don't remember how we became friends.
Mm-hmm.
I find that really interesting.
And then, when I got to high school, new environment, new beginning, and I think I was in grade 10 when I started Taekwondo.
Yes.
And I started to really appreciate the value of a positive environment.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I wanted to do Taekwondo for a very long time. We were in Afghanistan, and my oldest brother was doing a little bit of boxing or some form of martial art, and I was like, I want to do it. And my parents were like, no, they knew we weren't staying.
Yeah.
They didn't tell me that. They're like, no. So when we got to Pakistan, my second oldest brother, Adib, was doing Taekwondo, and I loved it. I used to sometimes go and watch him, and I was in love with it. You watch Bruce Lee movies on TV, you watch Bollywood movies on TV, and there's like these strong characters, there's action. Bruce Lee deals in a lot of his movies about racism as well, in Japan and China. And how he stood up for himself, really like, I
So
wanted
it was
to
an
be like that.
influence on you before you even got here.
I think, yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Absolutely, I think so. And I think standing up for yourself against people like that, you see that in movies and things like that.
So you found a Taekwondo club somehow.
So my oldest brother, his friend, was a Taekwondo athlete, but he was going to another club. And he's like, I hear that you really want to do it badly. So if you want to go, this is the place to be. And the reason this was the place to be was because the coach in that place that was teaching the whole thing was the Olympic team coach. He was coach for 88 Seoul Olympics, for 92 Barcelona Olympics. He had developed medalists in both Olympics. There was everybody that was training in the high performance program there were like either national champions or Pan Am champions. So the place was just a magnet for like developing high quality athletes. So I went there, and it was like all these years of me wanting to do it. It's like I was being held back, first because we weren't going to stay there. Then when we came to Canada, we couldn't afford it for a very long time. And then all of a sudden they just let go.
How many years after you landed?
So 1989, so 5 years.
5 years,
So
yeah.
after 5 years to
1994.
be here, having that like the background of seeing your brother do this, and it wasn't on the other side of town. It was.
It was actually, it
Or
was
was it?
it was at least an hour bus ride.
So you take
I used to
an
take
hour
the
bus, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
take the bus there and take the bus back in late at night, and it was an incredible experience. And so, here I was again, not as good as everybody else, but I had
You're in
the
the
effort
community.
of everybody else.
Yeah.
I was trying just as hard as everybody else. And at first, I used to get beat up a lot. I used to go there.
At the Taekwondo club?
At the
What do you
Taekwondo
mean
club.
beat up? You mean losing sparring
Losing
matches?
sparring matches,
Okay,
yeah.
so you
So
weren't
you-
getting beaten up, but you were losing. You're getting
Losing
beaten
in
up,
the
but
sport.
in a
In a
healthy
city.
way.
in a healthy way. Yeah. So obviously you're sparring and you're getting kicked and you're you're moving, but you're learning. Obviously they see you're a lower belt, so they're controlling their kicks. They're not trying to hurt you, but they're also telling you like, I'm better than you. So just watch yourself. But when you're trying to learn, the best way to learn is to keep going. Don't give up just because you're a bit scared of it. So keep moving forward. And so after a few months of being pushed around and stuff, I learned that I could block. Then I learned to block, and then I learned to move and avoid that contact altogether. And I'd say probably in about a year or a year and a half, I was able to maybe throw one kick in, getting kicked 10 times and throw one kick in. And in 1994, I had just joined. And then by 1995, my coach was like, you know what? I'm going to put you in provincials. Let's go. So even though I was a color belt, he gave me a temporary black belt. He lent me a black belt and say, I'm going to register you for the provincial championships.
You weren't a black belt yet?
I wasn't a black belt.
Wow.
So he said, let's go. And I won. It was the most incredible
he just saw it in you.
Who's this coach? Is that Master
Dossantos and Master Choung.
Okay.
They kind of work together.
Master Choung.
Yeah.
Have I met Master Choung yet?
No. You probably have. He's come to a few of our black belt tests.
Okay.
So he said, let's go. And, there's so many lessons in that provincial.
Well, I can we pause here for just 1 second?
Yeah.
Because we could do another session just on like this next 2 years that he's going to talk about. There's so much there to cover.
What's our time? I don't know what our time.
And I just wanted to, if it's okay, just take a pause. Some of us, when the losses, they pile up, there's this like, I'm out of time. You ever feel like you're out of time? You're out of energy. You're exhausted. What do you say to that? It's a parting word.
I think you have to look at it yourself and say like, well, what do I have to lose really if I don't keep going? And I think a lot of times we hold ourselves back because we look at the risk reward factor of everything. And I think if the risk to lose so much is greater than the gain that you're going to have, then obviously you're going to make the decision that is going to save you. And I think coming from Afghanistan and to Pakistan and to Canada, I think I didn't really have much to lose. I had a lot to gain and the experiences to gain and to look forward to the next thing. But as adults, when we're making, when we're faced with business decisions, it's not just about us. It's also about our kids and our families. And I think, if you have to look at it and make proper decisions and be like, what am I going to lose if I make this decision? How's it going to affect not only me, but my family as well? So I would strongly recommend, people to just, make decisions, obviously, that's going to benefit them and their families. And I think a lot of people use that as fuel to keep going. And I'm sure, we will have a chance to talk about this and, in terms of like the pandemic and how, I lost like close to 80% of my business at the time. But honestly, at that moment, I looked at my kids and be like, what am I going to do? And it's like,
keep going forward.
Just
There's
like your parents
way.
did.
Yeah. There's no way.
Crazy how it comes full circle.
And I think the other thing too, to what you were speaking to is your life shifted from like grade 5, 6 when you were coming into Canada to high school for a number of factors like English and so forth, but you found your community. And I think that is a pivotal piece, is people finding their community. And the sad part is often finances are a barrier for children and youth to find their communities, to build on all those skills too, right? So I think, but it's just inviting different opportunities to have that community around kids for that growth is so important for all of us adults as well, right? But it's 100%. Such a pivotal time in our lives.
100%. And that's why it's important for parents to put their kids in different activities to help them find their community, find what they're good at, find where they're going to thrive.
Yeah.
Let them try music, let them try dance, let them try martial arts. Take them to those math classes, whatever it is.
Whatever they need to do.
But you need to put them in lots of stuff and see what sticks. A lot of, and I think that's very important. Help them find their community, where they feel, like, when I'm teaching, or when I was training Taekwondo, I really feel like I come to life. And I think, it was through that trial and error, trying different things, and I found a place. And then, almost, close to like 20, 25, almost 30 years, I've never looked back.
Wow.
Nice.
So I'm taking your permission that we're going to have you back here multiple times. Whatever we got to do on the schedule, we will do.
I'd love to.
I really appreciate the time and the way in which you articulate and the messages that come from that. So thank you very much.
I just want to thank you so much for your time today. I think you have so much to share through your lived experiences that are not only applicable for where adults are at today, but also everyone kind of going through change at any point in their life, because there are so many kids that are in your situation coming to Canada today right now. And just to hear, I think there's so much value for them to hear your voice. And I love that you did that recent talk at a school, because there's so much value for them to see someone, like you said, you didn't have a role model to look up to when you came here. So now you're filling that gap of being that role model for the child that you once were. So I love to have you back again. We have so much to offer. We have so much wisdom and knowledge and experience to share. I think that's of value to people. And I just really want to thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for seeing value in it. I just feel like these are my experiences. I don't really see myself as an expert in any area. I just share my experiences. So I really appreciate your time and the conversations we've had. I really love this opportunity. Thank you guys so much.